and welcome to, an emergency episode of The Rest is Football. The news was broken this morning. We're recording this just before midday on Wednesday that Thomas Frank has been fired by Tottenham Hotspur. Obviously, they lost last night at home, and I think there was a lot of noise in the stadium. Thomas was quite curt and quite brief in his press conference after, saying that he wasn't going to get fired, but it turns out he did. So Alan Shearer and myself, Gary Lineker, have decided to pop on to give our views on the subject, perhaps see who we think could be the best replacement for Thomas. But God, I'm glad I opted out the world of management. I know it probably pays quite well, Al, but there are very few jobs that you go into and are almost guaranteed of getting the sack at some point.
Yeah, I guess. Look, you know the rules when you go into coaching or managing, don't you? That it's pretty simple, I guess, that you win games or you get sacked. And unfortunately for Thomas, he's a really nice guy. He's really engaged, and everyone got on really well with him, didn't we, when we worked with him? But that's the rules, guys. And I didn't think Tottenham would be involved in a relegation battle. Even last weekend, I was asked the question. I said, I don't think they will be. But that all changed last night when I saw them in the first half, particularly against Newcastle, and I thought, goodness me, is this the best you can deliver? I mean, they were awful. There was a little improvement in the second half from them, but the first half was as bad as I've seen any team this season. And after that, I thought, and then the result, Newcastle beat them, and you see what other teams are doing in and around Spurs.
Particularly West Ham probably rallying. I know they conceded a late equaliser against Manchester United, but they certainly seem to be making some kind of progress. Yeah. And Tottenham are, not even treading water, actually. They're probably started to drown. Yeah,
they are, and I guess something had to be done.
And it's usually the coach, the manager. Ultimately, you can look back in the recent history of Tottenham, and they've a long list of managers. Some of the biggest managerial names in the business. I think you listen to someone like Jose Mourinho, and he was saying the problems are at the top of the club, I think, suggest it. Other managers have said the same. Antonio Conte pretty much said the same sort of thing. Now, obviously, Daniel Levy left or was fired himself, which was quite an unusual move for a football club, because it nearly always is the coach that takes the hit, as is the case with Thomas Frank. But you're quite right when you say that we know how the rules are with football managers, and if you don't get the results, you get fired. But what is it, 7 months?
Yeah.
Something like, I don't know how you're supposed to turn a football club. And let's be fair here for Thomas Frank. And obviously we know him, but taking that aside, I think he's been incredibly unlucky. Just before the start of the season, he loses Maddison for basically the whole season. Kulusevski has not played at all under Thomas Frank. Obviously, Solanke was out for most of the season. He's lost Kudus for the second half of the season. There are a lot of injuries, and we know that clubs have to cope with injuries. But I think in his defence, I'm not playing devil's advocate or anything. It's just factually correct that I think they've had the worst injury of all the clubs that I can think of in the top flight at present.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that, and that's been a big factor. But the black and white of it is they're no better. In fact, they're worse off than they were last season when under Ange, and that in terms of a league place was very, very poor for them. So they're in danger of being relegated, and I guess that's why the board have had to act now, because they've got free 10 days before their next game, which is against Arsenal.
Good start for whoever comes in that one.
Yeah.
If they get someone in that time, because you wonder whether they've probably got someone lined up. They usually have, haven't they? Football clubs that when this sort of thing happens, not always, but this was not just about one game. This was about a series of, they have been underperforming, and surprisingly so, I would say, given how well he's doing. It's the first time he's probably been fired. I've said on this podcast recently, when I talked to Ancelotti, he was saying the first one is the one that hurts. The second one, you think, oh, it's a bit upsetting. He said, and after that, you just know it's part and parcel of what is, I suppose, a very well paid, but also impossible job for most. How many managers can you think of that you could go back to? Probably someone like Ferguson, Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, that don't actually get fired. There's not many. They're just a handful. It's an incredibly difficult job.
But they've got a decision to make now, haven't they, Tottenham? Whether they go for an interim or whether they feel as if there's someone out there that can do the job in the long term. De Zerbi's just left Marseille. So he would be one name, I guess.
People talk about he's the style of manager that perhaps the Spurs fans would accept and enjoy. A lot of the criticism of Thomas Frank was that he was a little bit more of a defensive-minded coach than perhaps someone like Ange Postecoglou from previously. But they say he fits the Tottenham DNA. My point would be the most important thing is winning. And that's what you need. So obviously De Zerbi, I think he's favourite, along with Johnny Heitinger, who's obviously was the coach. So he'd probably jump in if they don't get a manager immediately. Those two are the favourites. Interestingly for me, someone like Maresca will 20-1 with the bookies. If I were Tottenham, I'd very much look at him. Even though he's former Chelsea and they don't like that kind of stuff for Tottenham fans, possibly. But having said that, I think I think the Tottenham fans would really, really like a former Chelsea coach as well, but mainly a former Tottenham coach, and that will be Pochettino. But he's got a job to do in the summer, so he's not going to be free until after that. If he decides to leave the USA team, I suspect they won't do that well in the World Cup because they haven't really got the players, but home advantage can drive you through. If he gets to the knockout, if he got to the last 16, that wouldn't be a bad effort. So he could become available. So do they give it to as an interim to the end of the season?
I was just going to say, or do they go someone like, I don't know, like we've seen Martin O'Neill come back in at his age. Do they go someone like Harry Redknapp to get them to the end of the season? I don't know. That's, I guess, one of the options that they may look at, and then they can weigh their options up in the summer and then get a permanent manager in maybe after the World Cup. I don't know, but I do feel sorry for Thomas Frank. I just think it's something. After last night's performance, they're in the relegation battle, and I don't think the performances could go on. The Tottenham fans made their feelings known last night, both with their booing and also empty seats, which for an owner or for a chairman, that's not a good look. So I'm not surprised at all it happened this morning.
Do you think, Alan, obviously the fans turned on not just Thomas Frank, but the team as well. And there were a few altercations, weren't they, with players and the crowd? Not necessarily last night, but in previous weeks. Do you think now it's a more toxic world and more difficult for coaches and managers given social media and the fans that, obviously it's not all fans and it's usually a small percentage that voice their frustrations, particularly on social media, but you get these, you see things like on Arsenal TV when they lose a couple of games and everyone goes mad. Lots of the Liverpool fans were demanding Slot was out, I saw on social media. Now, I don't think this is, necessarily talking about all fans across the board, but those that scream the loudest are generally more heard nowadays because anyone can have a view. And these toxic fan accounts and all this sort of thing I think it probably more difficult than it's ever been before.
Well, the top and bottom of it is, Gary, that it hasn't changed in terms of the rules of a manager and a coach. You get results, or the noise around you is going to get loud. And it's louder now than it's ever been because of social media, because of podcasts, because of fan TVs, because of everything else. But ultimately, that noise stays away if you win matches. That's what it boils down to. And Tottenham haven't, and they're in a relegation fight, and that's why ultimately he's lost his job. Not because of social media, not because of the fans' unrest. It's because results have been nowhere near good enough for Tottenham, and someone has to pay the price. And the vast majority of the time, that's the head coach or the manager.
Who would you go for, Alan?
I think they need to buy a bit of time, which means appointing an interim to try and somehow get them through to the end of the season. And then they can weigh their options up then. And if they decide that maybe Pochettino is the man, then that would be I think one of the options that they would look at. And I don't think that would be an option, yeah.
Then what happens is an interim comes in and does really well. Then he keeps the job, and then they've got another problem next.
Well, that's
November.
Fine. That's not a bad problem to have. If the interim, whoever that may be, comes in and does well, fine. That's what they want him to do, and they want him to win games. So that would be what they would want, I would guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's possible. I mean, it's early days. The strong favourite is De Zerbi. Obviously, he's available, which makes...
If he were to come in here and take any nonsense whatsoever, he's doing the job.
And he also would not take an interim job.
He would for sure. He would insist on doing it his way, or he wouldn't go in at all. So you know what you're going to get with him, and if anyone tries to mess with him or interfere, you know what's going to happen. And I don't think that's a bad thing as a manager.
But if you want to do things your way at Tottenham, that in recent history, that's not necessarily been
unless
the case.
Things have changed dramatically at the top. I know they have in terms of personnel, how it's run, etc., etc. We're not sure of the ins and outs, but I guess if he goes in, then he's not taking any nonsense at all.
Spurs need to sort it out at the top, though. I mean, it's a very well-run... It's a strange business. One. It just shows you how football is not business. It's totally different to business, because it's actually a well-run business. It does reasonably, well compared with most others. They're never in, the kind of financial problems or anything like that. The fans would say, well, they've not really invested into the football team, and football's not a business. It's too emotional for a lot of it. So, the coach is always the one that suffers. But the fans will, they want a bit more commitment, I think, from the owners. I mean, Levy, before he got fired, talked about, we want to be challenging to win the Champions League. It's worth pointing out, too, that Thomas Frank has got them straight through into the knockout stage. Admittedly, I think they were slightly lucky with the draw. PSG were probably the only really top team they played, and they lost to them, although they put on a decent performance. So, I think Tottenham fans will also not just... They'll be happy with the fact that Thomas Frank is out, a lot of them, because I don't think they really got behind him because of results, obviously. But at the same time, I think there's an element of frustration at the top of the club, and the fact that they've not really supported the coaches with
Andy missed out on players as well, didn't he, guys? They missed out on players that they wanted.
Thing, which was embarrassing, and Morgan Gibbs-White, that they thought they got him, and then they hadn't. So sometimes I think it suits the club just to have someone to blame, get the coach out, it's their fault, distract the attention away from what they're doing at the very top. But I think there's a lot of unrest amongst certainly the Tottenham fans that I speak to, in terms of not just whoever the coach is. And I think there'll be quite a lot of sympathy there was towards Postecoglou. He gave them a trophy. And also towards Thomas Frank, who's obviously a really decent human being. So
you can also hear that as well, though, guys, from the players, from the captain, Romero. I mean, he hasn't been shy in giving his opinions in terms of recruitment and how they've been left short to play, as he feels as a player and a captain. Clearly, he didn't help his team out when he got sent off. But that sort of sums up where they are at this moment in time.
It does. Recruitment's everything, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah. I mean, and the recruitment, the next coach will be very important.
Yeah.
But they've had lots of big names, and nothing has worked in recent seasons, other than the fact that they did win a European trophy last season. So we'll watch this space. If it were me, I would try and get Maresca. I think I knew him at Leicester. He was a really good coach. Did really well, I thought, at Chelsea for a long time. First little tricky spell he had, he was fired as well. Other than that, I would think Pochettino down the line. I think that's what the fans would really like.
Yeah, exactly.
An interim until the end of the season, and then try and get Pochettino in.
Agreed.
But if, and then it depends how they do in the World Cup, obviously. So it's hard to plan for next season, isn't it? If you've got, because you can't suddenly start all your planning with someone that's in a job as important as coaching the host nation of a World Cup. So we'll see. We'll follow it very closely. And well, we thought we should do this. Just Tottenham is a seriously big club.
Huge.
And they're in a few problems. So, but for now, that's it for The Rest is Football emergency episode. Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.